Welcome back to another episode of the Hawk Vision Podcast. I am your host, Chuck Hawkins, here to help you shorten the learning curve on your way to greatness. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe across all of your social media platforms, especially here at YouTube, guys. More importantly, share this podcast with other visionaries just like you. We are doing big things here, working to be a premier location to help you bridge the gap to your personal and professional success. And I can't thank you guys enough for all the DMs, comments, and messages. We absolutely cannot grow this show without you. This week's guest is someone that I had the pleasure of meeting recently, working as a facilitator for Black Writers Weekend. And if you saw the episode with Tamika Newhouse, then you'll kind of be in the know and get all caught up on what happened there. But out of all the interviews I curated for that day, today's guest stood out because she embodies everything that we typically speak about here, which is dream chasing, commitment to excellence, and getting things done. She is a writer with years of experience that has finally taken the leap and created an absolute masterpiece for the culture. Someone that is obedient to her gifts and equally important, someone that I have tons of respect for. So you may know her as Celestial Holmes, but the new project called Looking for Hope is under her new name, Mbinguni. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm truly excited to be here.
Absolutely. Now, we had to run it back. We had a great interview for Black Writers Weekend, and it was just the chemistry as well as the conversation. It was like working with little sister. So I was like, we gotta have her back on.
Well, thank you so much. You made it very easy for me because I was a little nervous, and so I'm glad to do this again because we did have a very good time. So.
Absolutely. And guys, if you haven't caught that interview, feel free to jump into YouTube, search Black Writers Weekend. You'll be able to see myself and Mbinguni and talking about her book. And we're going to jump right into that. We obviously spoke at the event, and there's tons of questions that we didn't have a chance to cover, but I want to lead with what inspired you to know that you wanted to be a writer?
I think I've always known. It's been in my DNA for as long as I can remember. I've been an avid reader since I was a very young child, and I've always written stories, poetry, songs. All of that has been a part of my life as long as I can remember, and that has always been an outlet for me. My grandparents raised me, and I was the only kid in the house, and so that was like an escape for me. Reading and writing was my way of traveling and getting out, and so it's just always been a part of my life for as long as I can remember.
I love it. That, now that makes me think about my youngest daughter because she's several years younger than her closest big sister, maybe about 5 or 6 years. And I noticed that she's extremely creative. She writes and draws and plays. She does everything. And I know that part of it is because, that age gap is kicked in where they don't play anymore. So I could completely relate. And then I'm the baby. So I did a lot of, creative things. I don't know if they were as honest as writing as a child, however, but I get it. I get it. Now, Looking for Hope, which is the new book, we talked extensively about it, but when a project takes this kind of time, right, to write this book, and you can talk about how long it took, what keeps you going and keeps you committed to that end goal?
Well, it took me quite some time to write Looking for Hope. It took me roughly 14 years. And the biggest part of that was being afraid and not really feeling like anybody cared or wanted to hear or read something that I wrote. So what actually drove me to go ahead and finish the book was having mentors for people that I respected their work. And I said, hey, would you mind taking a look at this and telling me what you think? And they gave me their honest feedback. And both of them basically said that, my writing was really good and that the story was good and that the story needed to be told. And so that kind of gave me that little push that I needed to say, okay, I can do this. I have the skill to do this. Now let me really take a stab at it. And so that's what got me started.
Now, see, that's strong because a lot of people, we typically do entrepreneurship and, dream chasing, all those type of things. And what I pulled out of that is that you actually sought some counsel, right? Mm-hmm. That's not easy to do, right? Because you're putting your feelings out there. We all, remember Erykah Badu. I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit, right?
Yes.
So when you reach out and you say, hey, do you mind taking a look at this and telling me what you think? Were you prepared mentally for someone to say, whatever your day job is, keep doing that?
I was actually the thing that is very interesting about in my day job, I actually write content. It's educational content and
Yes.
it's not in the vein of what I really want to write. But that then has to go to be reviewed and it gets ripped to shreds all the time. So thankfully, I kind of was already conditioned to that. And what that allowed me to do, what that taught me to do, was to remove ego. So the way that I look at it when I give someone my work is they're there to make the work better. So I can't take whatever they're saying personal, even though it's something that came out of me. It
Yeah.
was personal in me developing it. Their goal is to make it better. And in order to do that, you have to take it apart and you have to say, no, this doesn't work or this works. And so that conditioned me and I was already prepared. Now, would it have hurt my feelings? Absolutely. But I am the type of person I wouldn't have let that stop me. I'm going to keep pushing. And more than likely, what it would have done was made me feel like, okay, I got to make this better. I can't go out like that. Like, I got to get this together. So,
Right. So you had a little bit of built-in muscle for it. Okay, that makes sense. Now, with that being the day job, is that why you chose fiction instead of nonfiction in regards to the project?
I've always wanted to write nonfiction. Everything that I've written back to, as far as the stuff I have back to sixth grade, has always been fiction. That's what I've been rooted in.
Yes.
I think the reason I am good at what I do in my day job is because I bring an element of creativity and kind of storytelling to it that other people don't necessarily bring. And so that is what has made me successful in what I do for my day job as an instructional designer.
Do you think that writers see things differently? Like I always flash back to like those movies where they look at something and then they see this code and in their brain is Rubik's Cube going. Do you see things differently in terms of being a storyteller that kind of adds to that, you know, element of why you write things differently?
Absolutely. And it's gotten to the point now, especially, I watched this TED talk where the man talked about, and I don't remember his name, where he talked about when you are interested in doing something, you have to consume a lot of that in order to start honing your skills. And so I used to think it was a bad thing that I watched a lot of television and a lot of movies. I'm really into television shows and movies. So now it's gotten so bad I can a show I've never seen. A lot of people can sometimes say a line before I can almost say the whole show and know where it's going. And
Wow.
because I'm constantly studying and watching the ways in which people tell stories, no matter what the medium is.
Yeah.
And so it's sharpened my skill a lot. And I'm grateful for that because again, I used to beat myself up like, girl, you watch so much television but it helps with storytelling a lot.
I think it's similar to that 10,000 hour rule, right? Where they say you have to be immersed in something for 10,000 hours before you can be considered an expert. So just because you're watching Lifetime and you know who's going to get killed and what excuse they're going to use, it doesn't necessarily mean, that you're doing too much, right?
Right.
You're working on your craft.
Right.
So let's talk about Looking for Hope and the Bullet That Changes the 7-Year-Old's Life. Talk to me about this book.
So, Looking for Hope is a coming of age tale. The character that we meet is Hannah Mouse Maynard, and she's 7.5 years old when we meet her. She's a sassy little something, and she has somewhat of a charmed life as a southern gal. And there's a tragic event that happens that changes her life, and it is the catalyst for an adventure that isn't necessarily a good one. There's some great things that happen along the way, and some things that are not so great that happen along the
Right.
way. But the overarching theme of the story is that when tragedy happens to us, it does not have to define us. That we can choose how our life goes after something life changing like that happens. And so I think it's filled with a lot of great characters, a lot of love, I hear people saying it makes them laugh, it makes them cry, which are all things that I desired to happen when I wrote this book. And so I'm just grateful that it is getting the reception that it is.
Nice. So one of the questions that I didn't get to ask when we did Black Writers Weekend is the timing of this coming of age tale, right? After the summer that we just had, with all the civil unrest and with all the things that we went through as a culture, did any of that kind of come into play with the creative process, just in terms of telling the story? Like, did you flash back to, we're still dealing with this, or we're still going through some of these things? Because it's set in a different time frame, right?
Right. No, I didn't flash back, honestly, in terms of trying to make it relatable. It just so happened that we are still encountering these types of things. And I didn't really go really deeply into that part of it. That is a part of the story just because of the time that it was set in.
Sure.
But it wasn't a conscious effort or a conscious thought to kind of connect it to now. I think it's extremely unfortunate that we're still going through these types of issues. And that's a whole
that's another interview.
Right, that's a whole nother interview.
That is hilarious.
I'm glad that in some ways it does make it easier to connect to the book, but I wish that we weren't still in the state that we are in.
Yeah, I am slowly but surely becoming someone that absolutely cannot stand catchphrases, right? Mm-hmm. So when you say the term coming of age, what does that mean to the average listener that has never heard that term before in regards to your story?
So what I mean when I say coming of age is all of the things that you go through when you're transitioning from child to adult. We see those things that happen for Mouse, learning about sex, learning about her body, learning about how humans interact, and women and men, and all of those things. Because when you're a child and you haven't really been exposed to a lot, you're so innocent and so you're not very knowledgeable and don't necessarily understand dynamics that are at play a lot of the time. And there's one particular stop in this adventure where you can see her naivete and understand that, you get to see it from a child's perspective, which is the way that I tried to write it. And hopefully, I did a good job at doing that. But that's what coming of age means to me. It's kind of like all of those little things that happen that kind of you awaken and transition into adulthood.
Yeah, well, all the Amazon reviews have been amazing so far. So I'm going to dare to say that you did an amazing job. As we talk about this book, I cannot, I don't even know what the word is. I can't get my daughters out of my head, right? Do you think that this is a book that all young women should read? Sort of to like how everybody kind of gravitated to the Sister Soldier book years ago. Do you think that it's along those lines where it's something that everybody, especially fathers of daughters, should be reading?
I think there's a little something for everybody in this book. Because of the tragic event, I would caution parents to kind of read it first and make sure their child is at an age where what's in the book is acceptable. There's not, a lot of crazy stuff. It's not a lot of profanity or sexual stuff in the book. That's not. Sure. But the overall theme and, some of the tragic events that happened, you may want to check it out first. But with that being said, I do think it's a little something in there for everybody. I've had even every guy that has read the book that I know about has also said they really enjoyed the book, which I was a little, like, I don't know if fellas are gonna.
That's so funny.
So, because it's kind of, some of the fellas in there are kind of a mess, but not everybody. So
not everybody.
I think that everybody can relate to this book in one way or another.
So we can't have this interview without us talking about my second favorite character, right? Okay. She's in charge of the girls. And I say that with my full Harlem Nights voice, guys. If those of you know Della Reese from Harlem Nights, you know she's in charge of the girls. And tell me about her interaction with Mouse, or kind of what Mouse will see.
So Miss Sookie is in charge of the girls. She
Sucky.
runs a house that is for the ladies of the night.
Ill repute.
And and she almost, because of the point at which she becomes a part of Mouse's life, even without knowing Mouse's history, where she's coming from, where she's going, she almost takes on the role of mother and protector for Mouse. And with especially what's going on around Mouse, and
Yes.
her being so young and not really understanding, Miss Sookie kind of takes on that role of trying to really shield her from that. Like in the opening scene of her meeting them, she says she doesn't need to be around here. She doesn't need to see what goes on between a man and a woman. She'll learn about that when the time is appropriate.
Right.
So she really protects and guides Mouse for the duration of the time that Mouse is with her. And she's really a character that, when her name came to mind, I immediately knew what her profession was. And she's one of my favorites.
She is in charge of the girls. But the reason why I think I like this character is because it presents an automatic duality, right? Like, she is somebody that obviously understands danger, somebody that obviously understands, grown people problems and issues and things that we like to do, right? And all of that comes along with it. But she also understands that it's not for everybody. And this little girl comes along, and now she has to play both lanes, right? And I thought that was just amazing. So how was it to write somebody with multiple sides to their...
It was interesting, and it's funny because initially I kind of had to go back in and add a little more of that depth in, and kind of let you see her battling with, okay, this is the chosen profession, and she sees it as giving these girls their own freedom and their own way to liberty, basically, by using their bodies, and she gives them the means to do that in a way that is, before we get to the 70s where there's pimps and that kind of stuff. She has them in a home. She's covering, she has a roof over their head. She feeds them. She pays them, all of those things. So for her, she sees it as, even though they're doing this type of work, that is a way to give them their freedom. Right. So then she kind of has to look at it a little differently when she has this little girl in the house who could possibly be exposed to these things. And, without giving too much away, there is a point where she has to make a decision that breaks her heart, but she knows it is the best decision for a Mouse. Wow.
Yes. Okay. So let's stop there because we're going to give up too much. Let's go back to a little bit of the business of writing a book, right? I think that a lot of people think with the social media age that we're in, that book writing and storytelling is a lost art, because now if it's not online, if it's not a TikTok or a reel or it's on Instagram, that it doesn't happen and it's not as important. The business of writing a book, what have you learned, and what do you wish you would have known through that process?
I learned a lot, and the biggest part of it that I learned is that it is a business. I am before really getting serious about being an author, I was a musician and I've done a lot of things. And for me, it has always been about whatever art I'm doing. So that is my primary focus. And that's one of the reasons I really didn't go too far in the music industry. I did release 2 albums, but I didn't like the business side of it. I wanted to sing. I just wanted music. So
let me find out you got some Leela James and some Lettucey over there in you. I'm gonna have to do some additional research.
Yeah, my 2 albums are on the wall back there. But I had to learn that with the writing process, that is also a business, and that if I want it to be successful.
So a little bit of a technical difficulty there, but we were talking about the business of writing a book, and you were mentioning why you chose to go with a publisher instead of self-publishing this time around.
So it was funny because one of my mentors, when I felt like the book had, I was finished and I was ready to go, my mentor started asking me all these questions. Have you done this? Have you done this? And my brain went into meltdown mode. I was like, okay, no. I didn't sign up for all of this. I just wanted to write a book. So when she started asking all those questions, it just so happened right around that time my aunt, was telling me there was a writer slash publisher who was doing like a speech or a presentation at the local library. And I went and I liked what she was saying. And she was really just talking about the process of writing a book,
Right.
but she let me find out that she was also a publisher. And so we
Nice.
connected and she read it and felt like I had something and decided to go ahead and publish the book for me. So that's how I connected with her. And that took a lot of stress and a lot of those little tiny details. She already knew how to do those things and she took it and ran with it. And so I was very grateful to have crossed paths with her.
That's awesome. So, where do writers find their initial audience? I once heard that an average book does well if it sells 200 copies, and I think we talked about finding book club members, and stuff. So, how do you find uh, customers or readers for a project that's literally just been created out of your mind?
Well, I think number one, book clubs is a great place to start. Of course, social media, find those bookstagrammers, Instagrammers who are into books and want to promote books. It start with your friends, people
Yeah.
who that are avid readers. Have them beta test the book because that will give you a lot of initial feedback. So they're out there. You just kind of have to dig a little bit and reach out for them. I had a book club that was like a beta test group for me prior to the book being released. And then I already had a built-in book club once the book was released. We kind of surprised them.
Oh, wow.
This is a group of 50 plus women. My aunt and my mother are members. My aunt is one of the founding members.
Nice.
And we surprised them. We sprung the book on them. That's why I have a pseudonym. We knew we were going to surprise them with the book.
Gotcha.
I sat amongst them and they read the book, gave feedback, did their reviews without ever knowing it was me until the end of the event we revealed it. And that was an amazing experience
I
to
was
me.
about to say that's got to be the scariest thing to ever do for a writer.
Of course, and for your debut novel, like it was crazy, but it was also extremely, extremely rewarding. A lot of people, like my publisher was like, "Are you sure you want to do that? Are you going to be nervous?" My aunt said the same thing. I was like, "Come on, I got this. We can do this." So it was fun, but it was amazing.
So I'm assuming this, part of this took place during the pandemic, obviously. So was it online when you started getting the reviews? Were you guys all on the same like Zoom meeting? Like, how did that work?
Well, for the beta test group, all of that was online, but for the reveal, that was an actual physical event, and it was
Okay.
in April of this year, and it
Oh,
was the
nice.
first in-person book club they had since the pandemic. So it
Wow.
just happened to line up, well. So it was cool.
That is awesome. One of the questions that we talked about during the Black Writers Weekend is one of all the words that are available to describe yourself, right? You say observer, storyteller, and then author. And most people would lead with author. So why did you lead with observer?
Because that is a big part of who I am. I've always been that, and I think that is what gives me the ability to tell stories well. It's because I sit back and I watch, and I'll make up little stories. I like to date myself. I'm single, and
That's
so I
hilarious.
like to date myself, and I will go out to dinner or movie or whatever, and I will, especially if I go out to dinner by myself, I'll sit back and I'll watch other people at tables and make up a whole story about why whatever's happening at their table is happening. And so I kind of just pay attention to stuff. I always have. And that's why I think I have those words in that order, because I think it kind of builds up to why I'm an author and how I kind of wield that skill.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think there's a difference to people that like to people watch, and then when it relates to your profession, I think it's a completely different thing. That is an amazing way to feed the imagination, right? And then you get to role play with yourself too. You can dress up by five, six different things. You could be Lola one night, Celestial the other night, and then you could be Mbinguni. So I think that's amazing. That's funny. I like it. I like it. There's a quote in the book where Mouse's main character says it's hard to work to get unstuck from that place, but we have to be willing to dig in. And we talked about that on the other interview, but I want to remix that question. During this process, what was the place where you had to be willing to dig in?
Fear. That was the biggest one for me. Um, fear that you're not good enough, fear that nobody wants to read it, fear of failure, all of those things. And you just kind of have to get to a point where you say, you know what? Bump it. If it fails, then I'll just try again or do something different. Or so that was the biggest blocker for me, and the reason that it took me so long to finish this book. Um, and it's just kind of with bringing those mentors into my life that helped me to push forward. They came into play probably about the last 3 years of the process.
Hmm.
And so that kind of fast tracked me and pushed me to get it done.
Now, did you actively reach out to look for mentors, or were these people that identified themselves and offered themselves up to you as, hey, the proverbial, if you need anything, let me know?
It was funny. The first one, who is Suzette D. Harrison, author of Taffy and Girl at the Back of the Bus,
Okay.
she, I connected with her for our family book club. We have a family book club, and I had selected Taffy as our read. And when we did like a little test run on Zoom, or I think at the time it was Skype was the hot thing. We did a little test run on Skype so that, when we did our book club meeting, I could Skype her in.
Sure.
And her spirit was just so warm and inviting. She's out on the same coast as you. And she was just so lovely. I don't even know why I said to her, I'm an aspiring author. I
Wow.
have this book that I've started. Would you mind reading it and giving your feedback and possibly being my mentor? And she said, sure, I'd love to. And
Wow.
so that's how that relationship started. And the second one was at the Savannah Book Festival. Her name is Tina McElroy Ansa. And my aunt said to her, well, my niece is writing a book. And I can't remember what else my aunt said, but she turned to me and she said, oh, you're writing a book? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she asked me something else. And then she went into prayer and she immediately started tapping on everything I was struggling with. And
Wow.
I'm a bag of water. So I just busted out crying. And she said after that, she said, well, send me your first chapter. And if I think I can work with you, then I will. And we'll talk about, the rest of it. So I did. And she calls me one of her little schoolgirls now. So
That is so funny. Well, yeah, because you led with yes, ma'am. I mean, if that ain't Southern hospitality and getting the early cheat codes in, I don't know what
listen,
is.
I'm a Southern girl through and through, born and raised.
That's
So
what's up. How important do you think mentorship is? And not just in writing a book, but in terms of life and dream chasing and goal setting, how important do you think that type of person is that you can trust with your dreams, right? That only wants to make it better.
I think it's extremely important, because if it had not been for them, I would still kind of be feeling my way through in the dark. They provided light in the dark for me, in the sense that I just knew I wanted to tell stories. I thought that I probably had a little bit of talent at it, and I needed that guidance, that reassurance. I also needed to be, not chastised, but for them to pull me up sometimes and say, "Oh, what you doing? What? No,
Right.
ma'am, that's not how we do that." So I needed that in order to get me to where I am now. And I don't think that ever goes away. You always need somebody who's gone on before you that can help you and tell you the steps. It's interesting because the generation coming behind me isn't necessarily as open to that. We're a little
Right.
more, the younger folks are a little more hard-headed and don't know how to listen per se.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No
so
comment. I'm a father of four. No comment.
which I get it. In your youth, you think you know everything and you're
Unstoppable.
invincible, right? And so I did not meet them until my late 30s. So maybe
Right.
that was also a part of it.
Mm.
But I definitely am grateful for the role they played, as well as some other people who kind of came on toward the end of that process. Nakisha Elise Williams, who is the owner of the publication company, she went through and gave her notes. And I have a best friend who has a doctorate in English and rhetoric, who I was intimidated to give her my work because that's what she
That
does.
red line. Yeah.
Right, right. But she gave me feedback that all of those things helped sharpen the book, and they contributed to when you see those reviews that say, I'm just like, this is the debut novel, because I had those people, watching and along the way and saying, up, watch what you're doing here. This is a misstep or whatever.
Yeah.
So they were extremely helpful, and I'm grateful. I know I'm blessed to have had that experience.
That leads me perfectly into my I don't know if it was Twitter or Instagram argument today as we record this, where I was going back and forth with some of my followers, some of my my cohorts or whatever, people that I've had on the show. Like once you're on this show, like you're family, right? So now we talk, you know what I mean? We run these things through each other. And so one of the things that I had mentioned, and I believe it was on Twitter, as I said, we have to stop telling people blindly to trust the process. Because I think it is disserving when we say trust the process, as if you won't question the process along the way, right? And so I had tons of people that were like, no, you have to trust the process. You don't trust the process, you'll quit. And I'm like, people trust the process to home ownership all the time and they scared of it, right? Like,
right.
And just to talk through that part. So what do you think about that statement? Is people saying trust the process, but it's okay to question it?
Absolutely. I think it's not necessarily trusting the process, but knowing it is a process, and that you will continuously be evolving and changing. And it's okay to question, especially if you have mentors, and it's okay to not agree. I think what we sometimes have a problem with is doing so with respect, especially to
Yes.
people who have the knowledge and the experience that we do not.
Yeah.
A lot of times, whatever. That's the old school way of doing it. Well,
Right.
but there may be a reason for it being that way, and it's okay to question. Well, why do you do it that way?
Right.
If you can understand the process, then you might be able to see the shortcuts that will work for you. But I think, like I said, a lot of times it's that respect factor and that disregarding our elders because we feel like, oh, that's old school, or you're not into the new way of doing things. That's not how we do it anymore. So
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to trust the process, but you do need to know there is a process, and that if you want to cut corners, you better know the whole process first.
That's strong. We talk about the word visionary on this podcast very often. Is this a project, Looking for Hope, that you want to see on Netflix or on a streaming platform? She's like, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about that process and what it looks like to create something, and now it's tangible, and now you want to see that tangible thing grow into something else. What does that feel like?
It's scary and it's fun. I will say, before the book was even released, I had already made my vision board of what I would like to see happen. Of course, it's got Oprah and Ava on there, like,
as it should.
Those are my dream producer and director. And I even created a vision board with the different actors I could see playing the roles.
Oh no!
Yes,
I love it. I love it.
Like, I see Aldous Hodge playing Ray, and a lot of people get mad. They're like, I don't want to see him play Ray, but that's who I keep envisioning as Ray.
Nice.
But I think that's all a part of it. Like, if you create, anybody who creates something ultimately wants to see it go to the highest level it can possibly go,
Yeah.
I think. And that's how I am with anything that I create. So I really, really am dreaming about seeing Looking for Hope on big screen, small screen, whatever. Um, so I think, maybe the next step for me in terms of that would be to begin working on the screenplay. I don't have a lot of experience in that. So that's another thing that I have to push myself to learn. I'm working on some screen stuff with a co-writer
Oh, nice.
right now. And so I'm in the process of learning what that looks like and how to properly create those types of documents. So that may be the next step for Looking for Hope, but we'll see.
Well, I will say there's this one podcast that I'm specifically partial to, right? You may know it. We've had a couple of screenwriters, award-winning screenwriters on the show, so we may have to, connect under that visionary umbrella and see if we can put that together for you. I think it would be absolutely amazing. Um, I asked you this on the other interview: is Hope gonna be okay?
She is. Mouse is gonna be okay. She's
Mouse, sorry. Yeah, look, I'm all
that's okay.
excited now. I'm like, I'm thinking about the other things now. I'm like, oh, we could do, yeah, she can
No,
get the
that's
movie
okay.
together.
That's okay. She's gonna be okay. She's a strong little something. So, and she's got a lot of spunk is the word I'll use, and so she's gonna be okay.
That's awesome. Do you think that that is something that she was born with, or did it develop through her path?
I think she had a little of it. It was there, but with everything that happened, she had to toughen up and grow up earlier than she probably would have under different circumstances. So I think it definitely got developed as she aged. So,
Which character in the book, if any, resembles you the most?
mm, oh, that's a good one. Well, I would have to say, with the exception of
Don't say
uh,
Sookie.
right, with the exception of being in charge of the girls,
Yeah,
it would
yeah.
probably be a combination of Miss Sookie and Miss Bernadette. So those would probably be the two characters that I'm kind of somewhere in between.
Okay, and I have to follow up. What is it about both of those characters, without giving away any of the book? What is it about both those characters that there's a little bit of you in both?
Miss Sookie is sassy and she's a protector, and Miss Bernadette is sweet and she's very perceptive.
Mm,
So those would probably be the traits that I have from those two characters.
I love it. Rapid fire round. I give you a couple of
Okay.
words. You tell me what those words mean to you. We're getting close to wrapping up. When I say the word belief, what does that word mean to you?
Who? Some something that's larger than yourself. Connecting with something that's larger than yourself.
Um, Visionary.
Foresight. You can map out the future.
I like it. Okay. Okay. Fear.
Debilitating. Um,
Mm,
it can stop you if you let it.
I like that. If you were given the word complicated, what does that would mean for you?
Complicated life.
Yeah,
Ooh,
that's fair. Very fair answer. Because I now understand why the old folks used to say, "Keep on living."
right.
For those of you
Life
guys that are
will.
just listening to
Ooh.
this, you have to see the face that she made. Please go to YouTube. Please go to YouTube for that one. But yeah, I think it's become one of those things that we have all of these different avenues for for opportunity and for connection with social media and online and all that, but for some reason that there's no app for life. Like, you gotta just keep living, keep going through things.
And it throws you curveballs, and you just sometimes you got to pick yourself up off that floor and dust yourself off and just try to put one foot, knee, hand, whatever you can put in front of the other to keep going. And sometimes it will really, knock you off your feet.
Yeah.
But it's also extremely rewarding, and because to experience love, whether it's familial love, whether it's with your friends, whether it's romantic love, that is one of the best feelings ever. And so in order to get that part, you got to go through the rough part. So
Absolutely. Last word would be manifestation.
work. Then it does not happen by osmosis. You got to put in the work.
I'm so glad you said that. Oh man, I am, because we talk about social media gives you these. You'll always know what period of social media we're in, because there'll be these catchphrases, right? Right now, everybody's on manifestation, and it was vision boards a while back, and there's always like this little, I don't want micro cultures, right, that we're in. And I tell my daughters all the time, like, manifestation ain't nothing but belief in the process of working, right? Like, no miracle ever happens without somebody doing something. So I am so glad you said that word.
Well, and I kind of figured it out not too long ago, because one of the things Suzette told me to do early on in the process was make a mock-up of the cover of my book and put it where I would see it every day. But what I figured out, it's not just because you're seeing it, but when you see it, it triggers something in you to do something towards that every day. You know what I'm saying? When you look, oh, I got to do this, or oh, I got to do that. I need to do this today. So the visual is only to help motivate you to do the work that you need to do. So that's, anybody who thinks it's going to just happen just because you think about it and think it's going to happen, it's not. It doesn't work that way. You got to do the work.
Said it does not work that way. That is so funny. What's next for Mbinguni?
I'm working on my second novel, but also under my birth-given name, Celestial, I am working on a couple of projects. I write for Black with No Chaser and Black Girl Nerds, but I'm also, like I said earlier, working on a sitcom with a friend of mine. We're co-creating that.
Nice.
So I've got a lot of projects going on, but I love it, and I can't wait to see, what's going to happen next.
So I have to ask, how does one juggle all of these projects without going crazy, still being creative, still being productive? What's your approach to time management?
You said without going crazy.
Who said I ain't went crazy?
Right. No, I tried to make sure I'm scheduling time to do the things that I really want to do, but I also really do believe in self-care. When I need to check out, I check out, so what I have learned, and one of the mantras that I say to myself is, I have the time to do everything that I need to do, so that I don't feel rushed or pressured. And if my body is telling me, or my mind is telling me, take a break, I listen. I take a break and say, you know what, that's going to have to get done tomorrow. So that would be the biggest thing, is just, using your calendar, trying to set aside time to do each little piece, and tap out when you need to tap out to refresh and refuel.
Is Celestial looking for hope?
Yep.
She is.
Always. I'm a very hopeful person. And I really try to always see the light side of things and the beauty in things, even when they don't feel good, or whatever the case may be. So I think I'm always looking for hope, and I'm a bit of an adventurer, so I'm always out trying things. And so
That's awesome. Last question is, well, actually second to last question, because this is a two-parter. So the title is Looking for Hope. If hope is looking for someone, would they be able to find Mouse, or would they be able to find Celestial?
Ooh, probably a little bit of both. Because I think there's a big part of me that's in Mouse, and in the people surrounding her. So probably a little bit of both.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, why that title for the book?
It's kind of a double entendre. It is looking, talking about the overall thought of looking for hope, looking for something positive and uplifting, but it is also the name of one of the characters, and I won't reveal who because that would give some things away. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have been rocking with the great one, the absolute great one, Celestial Holmes. You know her as Mbinguni. And yours truly, Chuck Hawkins, here at the Hawk Vision Podcast. I hope this interview has been informative. I hope that we added a smile to your day, but most importantly, that we have helped you shorten the learning curve on your journey to success. As you can tell, this book is going to be a game changer, bestseller, and most importantly, is going to help people find their own versions of hope through their mature, open manner communication. Order your copy of Looking for Hope right now. Jump on over to Amazon, give her yet another 5-star review. Like, share, and subscribe across all your social media platforms. Send in your messages and your guest suggestions. As always, we cannot continue to grow this show without you, my visionaries. I'm so appreciative that you've given us your time today. You know how it goes. There is absolutely no miracle that happens without someone doing something. And we'll either see you at the top or from the top. The choice is yours. Mbinguni, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.